Hey everybody, what's going on? Today we are talking about Season 1, Episode 2 of Doctor Who, The Devil's Chord. This was a really fun episode, and it was a great way to cap off a 2 episode night premiere. And I have to be honest that even though I enjoyed the episode, there isn't so much in the episode that I want to talk about, which means that I'm probably not going to be talking about the episode scene by scene in this video as I've done with previous reviews. I think it's better served if I just talk about the things that I liked and then the things that I didn't, and we leave it at that. Without any further ado, let's get into it. Right off the bat, I have to say that I do very much still enjoy this dynamic between the 15th Doctor and Ruby, even though it is still a little bit hard to see what exactly their dynamic is. Like, yes, I understand that they're going with more of a best friends kind of dynamic. I just don't see how the Doctor and Ruby fit together in terms of coming up with a solution to solve the problems that they're facing. I wish there was a little bit more characterization to Ruby to show how she is motivated to help the Doctor. What is driving her? What is it that she is able to bring to the table in these situations that is something that is yet to be seen? I'm also not a huge fan of the time jump that we get here. I don't really like that we are missing time between the Doctor and Ruby, and this is a sentiment that other people have been echoing online because typically we get to see the gradual trust between the Doctor and his companions. I said in my last review that it seemed like their dynamic was moving a little bit too fast. The Doctor was maybe a little too trusting of Ruby, which he has no reason not to be trusting of her. The Doctor usually picks the right people to travel with him, so I don't see the trusting being too big of an issue. I just don't see it as a thing that would happen that fast because the Doctor is usually more closed off. I do realize that with the 15th Doctor, Russell T Davies is taking an approach where the Doctor is more open with his feelings. He's more easily able to connect with his companions, but I still feel like it would have been nice to get more of a gradual shift in this relationship, and I do think we were kind of robbed of that by getting this time jump. Then again, I also understand that we've only got 8 episodes here, so we kind of have to move faster than we typically would. Part of me is hoping that with this time jump and with the mysticism of the season that it seems is being set up, that this is intentional and that there's a reason why things are moving so fast and that it's actually baked into the story, but that might be wishful thinking. We'll just have to see how things kind of turn out. This week's villain is the Maestro, who we learn is the child of the Toymaker and who was able to come into our realm because of an incident in 1925 where a piano teacher played a forbidden chord for their student called the Devil's Chord. Similarly to what we saw in Wild Blue Yonder, when people seem to test the boundaries of mythos, that is when these mythical beings are able to come into our realm. And it is a very fun way that we get the introduction to the maestro. I've never personally watched Drag Race, so I was unfamiliar with Jinx Monsoon before this episode, but I think she did a fantastic job. This was a very fun performance, very fun character that was very campy, but at the same time, you still felt like this was a formidable opponent for the Doctor. And I thought that the casting of Jinx Monsoon and this concept in general really allowed for these big showpieces that Doctor Who typically doesn't do. I will say that I said in my last video that I prefer when Doctor Who isn't making a big spectacle of itself. I did think that there were times where the episode got a bit too full of itself and took me out of the episode, especially at the end of the episode where we got that musical montage. That being said, Doctor Who has got more money now to do these big set pieces. I can't really begrudge it, especially in a season where mythos and these fantastical beings are making these appearances and where the line between what is real and what is fantastical is getting blurred. I can see how that fits with the tone. As for the concept of the episode, as far as the conflict of the episode, I thought this was a really good idea here. I love the idea of the maestro coming in and essentially taking all of the music and the accompanying feelings that music provides us out of the world and just leaving us with this really bleak kind of idea of what the world could be if music was eliminated from existence. I thought that was really, really clever, and I think it was a great statement about the impact of the arts. I also thought that this was a brilliant way to get around the Beatles copyrights. I know that it is very hard to get Beatles music into a television property or a movie. So the idea of having a situation where you aren't able to have the Beatles perform these great songs, and in fact, they're only motivated by money, so they only care about making these really silly, dumb pop cash grabs is something that is very fun to play with, especially if you know the history of the making of this album for the Beatles. If you know anything about the Beatles at all, you know that this is not the way that they operated. And so to have a scenario that is the complete opposite situation of what we know of the Beatles and have an explanation for it that really gives us a poignant story about the importance of the arts. I think this was a really fun way to do it. That being said, I do wish the Beatles were utilized a little bit better here. I think it is a bit of a disservice to have the first appearance of the Beatles in Doctor Who be a bit more understated here. I feel like you could have especially given Ringo and George more to do. I think Paul and John could have had more to do here, even though I do like how at the end of the episode they find the music. They find the chords that they need to be able to defeat the maestro, and it is born just out of a love of music and wanting to create something that is bigger than themselves. I think that was a good tribute to the actual working relationship between Paul and John. I just wish we could have seen a little bit more build up as to how that happened. Getting back to the Doctor and Ruby, I will say that one of the things that I didn't love about this conflict and the way that it rolled out is that pretty quickly the Doctor seems to want to give up. He seems to be in a situation where he is encountering this other mythical being, just like the Toymaker, that he says is way too powerful for him to be able to defeat, which I find kind of interesting because he literally defeated the Toymaker by playing a game of catch. So I don't know what exactly it is about the maestro that is seemingly more of a disaster scenario. This is something that I think is not served well by the fact that we have this time jump, because I can completely understand this reaction if we had been with the Doctor for 4 or 5 more adventures, and this was kind of the culmination of everything that he had seen up to this point. But because there is missing time between the Doctor and Ruby's adventures in the Space Babies, we don't really see that progression. We don't see him getting to his wits' end and having it culminate in a moment like him telling Ruby that he doesn't think he's going to be able to defeat the Maestro, and that this is probably too big of a situation for him to be able to save the human race. I did like how Ruby stepped in here and how she reassured the Doctor that they could take on the Maestro and that the world didn't have to end. Again, I just felt that it rang a little bit hollow with this only being the second episode proper of Ncudi's tenure as the Doctor. I will say that when we got to the actual showdown between the Doctor and the Maestro, that it was shot really well. I love how the musical notes were used as a weapon against the Doctor, and how there was this musical sparring match between the Doctor and the Maestro. It was super fun to watch. It was pretty gripping as the Doctor is trying to find the right chords to banish the Maestro. And I think that both Ncuti and Jinx Monsoon gave a very great performance as they're doing this kind of game of cat and mouse that you're wondering who's going to come out the victor here. And I think there was a lot of great tension in the way that it played out, with the Doctor getting so close and then hitting the wrong note, which gives the Maestro that upper hand to kind of take back control again. I will say again that I love the way that John and Paul were brought into the resolution of this episode. It did feel a bit Deus Ex Machina. It did feel a little bit like it made what the Doctor was doing insignificant, but again, I did like how, because of who John and Paul are and because of their legacy in our own history, that they were able to showcase in the episode their genius and their impact on the world. And so that, again, was a very fun thing to see, even if I do think that it was shoehorned into the conclusion of the episode a little bit. The episode caps off with a musical performance that, as I said, was a bit too much for my tastes, but again, with the way the season seems to be playing out and the themes that we are dealing with here, I can't be too mad at it. And it was put at the end of the episode, so it wasn't like it was taking up screen time away from the plot, even though, like I also said, we probably could have gotten more time with the Beatles that was most likely taken up by this musical centerpiece. But again, it is something where, because Doctor Who has more money, I get why they want to do things like this, especially in a season like this. So I can't begrudge them wanting to do that too much. As a stray observation here, I loved the callback to the original classic Doctor Who series. I loved that they made mention that the first Doctor was existing in the same timeline as the 15th Doctor. I thought that was a very fun little callback there. I loved the Susan shout out, even though we don't know if we're ever going to get a cameo from Susan. I really hope we do, but that might not be in the cards. Then again, there might be some threads that are being placed here that could foreshadow a Susan appearance sometime in Ncudi's tenure. All in all, I really enjoyed the episode. I think it is a super exciting time to be a Doctor Who fan, because I feel like we are finally getting some more excitement injected back into the show. It is just a fun watch for the first time in a few years. It is not taking itself super seriously. I do hope we are getting more serious storylines in the future. I think with something like The Wild Blue Yonder, that is kind of an indication that we will. And so I am very excited to see how the season is going to shape up. I know that next week, Stephen Moffat's episode is going to be airing, so I am super excited to see his return. I am sure it is going to be a ton of fun. I hope that it injects some more of those serious tones that I'm looking for the season. But either way, like I said, I am super excited to be enjoying this season. It is a great time to be a Doctor Who fan, and I can't wait to see where we go from here. That's going to be all for me for this video. If you liked the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell to make sure you get notified when I post a new video, and until then, see you later, guys.